This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviat. Tonight we're talking about pets and the law. As pet lovers, you may also have questions about the pets you don't love, the neighbors' pets that are a problem, that maybe neighbors not taking good care of their pets. We have tonight Huntsville's Director of Animal Services, and he can answer questions on things like licenses. Maybe you've got questions about what the requirements are for spaying and neutering. Maybe you've got questions about the neighbors' pets and barking dogs and leash laws. Or maybe you've got questions about pet adoption and fostering and the animal shelter that's here. Call in your questions. Be live on the air, 256-536-0077. Be live on the air, or you can text us your question to that same number. We've already got one in talking about the one bite rule and whether it applies if the dog has bitten its owner before. You can also email a question, any legal question, any day of the week. You send it to lawcall@waytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we pull them out. We've got some of your email questions ready for tonight, too. Michael Timberlake's here and ready for some of your questions tonight, too. Good to have you here.
I'm happy. I'm good.
We love our animals, but they can be a problem. We pulled tonight's video. Tonight's You Make the Law Call video. So we've got a situation, neighbors' kids are outside playing. Sometimes the pets are out, too. And then we've got this. This dog comes up. Okay, it's going to be fine. Don't be worried, because in the end, it's going to be up to a heroic neighborhood cat. There we go. Get him. Get him, Fluffy.
There we go.
Takes care of it. Now, nobody appears to be seriously hurt here, maybe the dog's pride, but it's an opportunity for us to talk about dog bite cases. What's the legal recourse? If this child's parents, do they have a lawsuit against the owner of this animal? Let's assume that this child is in his own yard and this happens. What does the location make a difference when you're looking at that? And Michael, I know you've had cases. You've got cases
sure,
with animal problems and really severe ones.
Well, and you see the, and unfortunately, when we see cases typically involving an animal, it's not a good situation. It's bad. There can be minor instances that don't get to the point where they call lawyers. When they get to the point where they're calling a lawyer, it's usually something that's pretty significant. And basically, typically the liability or the situations revolve around the location of the incident. Is it on the person who was injured's property? Is it on the on a place where they were rightfully allowed to be? If that person was on their own property or in some public property, then there's leash laws there that are designed to try to prohibit this kind of free roaming activity with animals. And so those are the kind of things that we typically look at. But in general, if an animal is known to be dangerous, and we'll talk about that through as we go throughout the show, and you allow it to roam, then the owner of that animal is going to be responsible.
And it may make a difference if it's city, county, what state you're in. All of those play into it.
Typically does in terms of what the law requires, in terms of restricting or making sure that a dog is not roaming free.
And we've got a great guest tonight.
We have the perfect guest. We have John Fisher, who's the Director of Animal Services in Huntsville, and he can talk to us a little bit about, or talk to us everything about the way the city does things. We'll talk a little bit about the way county does things. But we're really glad to have you. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was exciting to be able to talk with you all.
He's coming by way of Texas, but he's also been a zookeeper in the past, wildlife rehab, so you know the whole area, the whole spectrum of it. So it does make a difference whether it's something happening in the city of Huntsville or it's in the county. Now, you cover the city of Huntsville, right, in certain ways. What's the big difference?
So the biggest difference is we are within the city limits of Huntsville regulated by our city ordinances. So as long as our city ordinances are as stringent as state law, we can make them more stringent. And often our city ordinances are more stringent than they are in a county or state law. When you get into your dangerous dog declarations and vicious dogs and things like that, then you can start to reference your state laws.
Right.
If something happens out in the county, so Madison County is not in the city, like a dog attack, does that change the process of things?
It shouldn't change the process. The enforcement options are still the same. The requirements are still the same. It's who's doing that, taking that enforcement action. Within the city limits of Huntsville, it's us at Animal Services. When you start getting into criminal violations, then it would be the sheriff's office in Madison County.
Yeah, so your department in Huntsville is basically designed to enforce the set ordinances that the city's enacted. And so there's animal services, there's animal control officers that operate in terms of not only in, just monitoring, going out and monitoring neighborhoods, but they also respond to specific incidents.
Correct. Our animal services officers have the authority to conduct these types of investigations, issue citations, and put it in front of a municipal judge if we need to.
Right. And unfortunately in the county, we basically have to rely upon the sheriff's office to try to do those types of things.
Correct.
And in instances where they cannot, where it's not a witnessed event, then that becomes in another situation where you're having to go to a magistrate to try to get a warrant, and then the sheriff's trying to execute on that warrant.
Right. You're collecting affidavits and taking witness statements and like you mentioned, taking it to the magistrate and letting them make a decision on that.
Right. Okay.
We've got callers waiting. We've got Paula on the line with a question from Coleman. Hi, Paula. Thanks for calling. What's your question or comment?
I have a neighbor who has 7 dogs that run free.
7 dogs.
Wow.
Paul, and I know we're not in Coleman County, we're not in Coleman City. Paula, do you know whether there are any rules exactly where you are? Is this within the city limits, or are you out in the county?
Laws they are supposed to be in a pen.
And they're not?
And they're not.
Okay. If it were here, what would you do?
Yeah, if it's in Huntsville and you've got a situation where a neighbor has dogs that what is the requirement in terms of either leashing or fencing in the Huntsville city limits?
Sure. Within the city limits, we do have a leash law. Dogs are required to be on a leash or behind a fence that will contain them at all times. We don't have limits on the number of dogs. We instead refer to our nuisance laws. So basically, are they contained? Are they being cared for? Is the property being cared for? But yeah, we do require animals to be contained at all times. They can't run loose.
Right.
So one could be a nuisance.
One could absolutely
Seven
be.
certainly could.
Seven could be bad. Now, in the county, are there similar, restrictions in terms of leashing or fencing?
Again, they focus just much like us. Is it a nuisance? Is this animal a nuisance? And then they can take action, whether that's an animal that's at large or not cleaning up after your pets or anything. They base theirs on the state issued nuisance laws.
Right, as opposed to the ordinances that are in place for cities.
Correct.
So a city, if it's in a city, they're going to have stricter requirements in terms of what's allowed, and then there's going to be faster response because there's special departments.
Who should she call? So if she thinks that they're a nuisance, who do you call?
If it's within a county, I would reach out to your county sheriff.
Okay.
If it's within a municipality, reach out to your local municipality.
Okay, you get all kinds of questions at work all day. Okay, so somebody called in, they don't want to go on the air, but they say they know their neighbor's dog is pooping in their yard. If they put the poop back in the neighbor's yard, is that a violation of the law? I bet you're going to get trouble for trespassing or something if you go doing that. Anybody wants to take a stab at that one?
Well, I mean, I think that's I don't know if there are any poop ordinances, but it's obviously the thing to do is if you have a dog that makes a mess, then you clean up after the mess. You know? That should be the right thing to do.
So we had a text question in. Somebody says, okay, we've got the 1 bite rule, and we're going to talk about what that 1 bite rule is. Does the 1 bite count if the dog has bitten the owner before? So where do you start counting?
Well, I mean, in terms of that's in terms of what we deal with liability for incidents involving dogs. There's the kind of the adage that one dog, that a dog gets 1 bite. Because the owner of the dog doesn't know if the dog is dangerous or has dangerous propensities to the point where it would bite someone else or injure someone else, unless it is, done this before, it exhibited these types of behaviors. So we always, it's kind of say if a dog has bit somebody else before, and then they get 1 free bite because you didn't know it was coming. But if they bite the second person, then the owner is going to be essentially liable. Under the law of Alabama, the court has interpreted, dangerous propensities of a dog to not just be a prior attack. It can be something by virtue of the breed of the dog that would put the owner on notice that this is a dangerous dog. pit bulls, you know, chows, different types of mixes that are known to be aggressive to humans qualify for this. So an owner is basically, just by nature of the breed, on notice and responsible for any attacks.
And if they bit the owner, he sure can't say he didn't know.
Right. So in this situation, you know, if it's one bite and they bite the owner's probably the least likely person to get bit by a dog. So they're definitely going to be on notice of the problem.
Do you get a lot of calls with people saying, what are these rules? What are the bite rules?
We conduct bite investigations several times a week.
Wow.
So we see it all the time. Thankfully, nothing too significant. Usually it is a family member, or now we're seeing it a lot more in delivery persons. Our groceries get delivered, our Amazon packages get delivered. So as those increase, we're seeing bites increase quite a bit as well.
Yeah, and in terms of you know, when somebody reports a dog bite, what does your office do? What do y'all do?
So our officers will go down and collect any evidence, pictures, any medical records that might have been, you know, we could have gotten a hold of, and then we report it to the health department. The health department, if the bite has broken skin, the health department requires a 240-hour quarantine period, so 10 days of quarantine either at a veterinarian or sometimes at our shelter. If they're current on rabies vaccines, sometimes they'll let them quarantine at home, but if it's a significant bite, then we have the authority to remove the dog from the home at that time.
And then, so if a dog injures somebody else, and then they go through a process where they're quarantined, even if they have their shots, if they're up to date on that, what's the process to the legal system?
So it'll go in front of a magistrate, and we can, within the city limits, we also have a vicious animal ordinance, so an animal doesn't actually have to bite someone. It can just exhibit behaviors that would make a reasonable person believe that it could bite. So we put it in front of a judge. The dog owner gets to say their piece. We share whatever evidence we have, and then the judge makes a decision. It can be not safe for the community at all, so he'll order humane euthanasia of the animal. Sometimes the animal's just awarded back to the owner if it's unfounded. Other times the judge requires certain requirements for them to be able to keep their dog at home. So a certain, you know, surety bond, $100,000, different requirements for what type of enclosure, sterilization, microchipping. There's a wide gambit of what he can require.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of one of those things that people want to have a dog that there's been an incident. There seems to be a path that they can keep the dog under certain circumstances, but you know, they have to have, like you said, insurance. There has to be an enclosure with a concrete base, you know, that really keeps him in place. So there's, you know, the rules are kind of interesting in terms of what they can require.
I bet a lot of folks don't want to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to that, right?
That's right.
We've got a lot of folks texting in. We're looking forward to getting to those questions, but they're telling us we got to take a break. So we'll take a break and be right back with more of your answers on pets and the law.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Maservi. And hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back. Tonight we're talking about pets and the law. Michael Timberlake's here from Timberlake, League & Brooks. And we've got John Fisher, who's the director of the Huntsville Animal Services. So you're free to call in and ask questions, or maybe you have comments about folks and how they take care of their animals. And okay, what is Paw Legal? Tell me about Paw Legal. And who is this?
This is Ruby. This is she's basically she is the office work enforcer at my office. So she comes to the office 2 or 3 days a week and makes sure that everybody's doing their jobs and has the appropriate treats at their desk. and she's designated on the website as
Paw Illegal. Now I'm getting
and,
okay.
So she's, you know, she has her own little persona.
That's great. I wouldn't get any work done if I had my dog there.
Well, you know, she basically goes office to office and makes sure that everybody in our office is there, sitting at their desk doing work.
Lots of law offices. A lot of offices have pets around. We had just lost my sweet puppy dog, Sophie, little corgi dog, in the past 2 weeks, the light of my life. But they get older, and I think John and I were talking about, you know, you go through a cycle of animals over the years. Maybe in a lifetime you've had 5 or 6 really close special animals. Does the universe set us up for this? It's supposed to be teaching us something because we miss them so badly when they're gone.
It's a hard thing to lose a pet. That's for sure. That's for sure. And so, but it's not. You know, it's like everything in life. If it's indefinite and lasts forever, it's not as.
It's worthless.
Well, it's not worthless, but it's not as you don't have as much gratitude for it.
As much as we love animals, so people are writing in also asking about animals that are being abused or neglected. So somebody has texted in and says, who do we contact about dogs being neglected and neighbors that refuse to let others, like won't let us give them food or water? They put up cameras and pointed it at our home to catch us if we try and help the dogs. We're concerned about this situation. What do they do in a situation like that?
So within the city limits of Huntsville, you want to call us. If it's during normal business hours, give us a call at the shelter. We can send our officers. They're all trained. Animal cruelty investigations and evidence collection, de-escalation, things like that. So they will respond. Those are a high priority call for us. The same thing for our friends in Madison County. Their animal services team are experts. They know what they're doing. They can make the scene, assess the situation, and then they can bring in the sheriff's department if they need to.
Yeah, and there's some state laws that are kind of designed to try to prohibit this kind of activity. I think there was one. Was it a cording or a chaining of a dog that was recently passed in the past few years?
We have you can't tie out a dog with using a chain or to a fixed point. So if you're going to have a dog on a tie out, it needs to be on a trolley system that will allow the dog some movement. There are some shelter requirements. It must have water, not water that it can tip over. It has to be a secured water source and access to good nutritional food as well.
And then some kind of shelter too in case of rain or whatnot.
Right. And shelter sufficient to protect them from the elements.
Right. And so that's something that every dog owner has a responsibility to do. In terms of other types of things, registration, vaccinations, what are the requirements basically to own an animal?
Sure. So state law requires that all dogs, cats, and ferrets have a rabies vaccine. So that is something that can only be administered by a veterinarian, while other vaccines are recommended, and sometimes you can get those to administer yourself to your pet. And then we also require your pets to be registered with the city. It's not a revenue generator. We want you to have current tags on your pets. We want to keep up with the rabies vaccine because those tags are a free ride home. If we pick up your pet, we scan them for a microchip and we check them for a tag, and we just put them in the truck and take them home. They don't have to come to the shelter for us.
Oh, that's great. And so microchipping, that's not something that's required, but certainly that's something that's recommended, right?
Absolutely. That's the fastest way. Dogs can slip collars. Cats can certainly slip collars. You could have not had your collar on when your dog's inside and he's slipped through. We've got the holidays coming up, so we're going to have lots of folks in and out of our homes. So those microchips are the fastest way to get your pets home. And
how does that work in terms of, do you just take it to a vet, you take it to animal? Who has the microchip readers?
So the readers are at veterinarians' offices. A lot of our folks in our communities actually have microchip readers themselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you could get one.
Yeah.
You can jump on Amazon and order a microchip reader now. But they'll often call us, and we have a pretty extensive database that goes throughout the United States and Canada, so we can check those microchips. Now, it's important to keep your microchip registered. So if you've got your pet microchipped and you've moved, it's important to get that address updated.
Wow, that's great.
A viewer loves your paw legal at your office. Somebody says, we're talking so much about dogs. Okay, please have Mr. Fisher address the city law that requires cats to be kept on their owner's property, just like dogs. Most people think it's okay to let cats roam, and they say it's not?
It's not.
It's not.
Leash laws apply to dogs and cats. There is an exception to the cats being allowed to be at large, and that is cats that are part of our trap, neuter, and release program. These are cats that are not suited to be inside of a home, and you will be able to identify those cats because they will have one of their ears clipped, so there'll be a straight line on one ear, and those cats are allowed, but we manage those cats' populations through sterilization, bringing them to shelter, getting them vaccinated, getting them back out. And then there's always deterrent techniques that are both humane and effective for pets. So you can use, there's sound, there's these plugs that you can plug in that we can't hear, but the cats can. There's all kinds of wildlife deterrents that work to keep the cats out of your flower beds and things like that as well.
Okay, what about old-fashioned ways like shooting them with BB guns or rubber pellets or that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Is that legal?
We don't want to do that. You start crossing into firearms, even though they're just BBs, and you don't know where they're going to go or where they're going to hit, and they're not nearly as effective as something where you affect their olfactory senses or their auditory senses. They're going to want to stay away from those areas far more.
Somebody's texted in and said, okay, well, what if somebody's dog is being tormented by somebody like the neighborhood kids and the dog bites in self-defense? Do dogs have self-defense?
Well,
claims?
Yeah, it's kind of a situation where when we look at that situation, we often look at, well, where did this incident happen?
Okay.
So if it's a situation that happens on the dog's property and the kids are not, haven't been invited onto the property or not necessarily authorized to be on the property, then that's something that they could use as a defense in that situation. Because it's that you look at whether the bite happens on the victim's property or the dog property. If it happens in a place where the person who is injured is authorized to be, then the owner of the dog is automatically responsible for the medical expenses. We call that the mailman rule, the mailman statute. So in terms of Amazon people that you've implicitly or impliedly authorized to come onto your property, then you're going to be responsible for the medical expenses at minimum if your dog injures them on your property. But if somebody comes onto your property and your dog is properly restrained and housed, then they're going to have a hard time making a claim against the dog.
Okay. Yep. Same thing for getting a dog euthanized even after an attack. If you came on their land.
Yeah, you get into the provoked and unprovoked language, but on their own property where they have been invited or authorized to be, again, you're going to have a hard time defending that.
Okay. Right. We got an email from Jeff. Jeff wrote in and said, we have a raccoon that comes to our back door and eats out of the cat's bowl. My wife has sort of adopted him. I'm worried about her getting bit. Is there some kind of edible rabies vaccine that we could get to feed this little guy, or can we trap him and bring him in for a shot? I know this sounds crazy, but they love their little raccoon.
Well, it's kind of interesting because that's like in the area where I grew up, we've had raccoons the entire my entire life.
Yeah.
And, we don't want to pick them up.
No, but they're cute.
But they are cute, and they have been fed, bread,
hot dogs,
whatever. So what's the best practices in terms of of dealing with wild animals in that situation?
With raccoons, you can't. There's not an oral rabies vaccine. There's only injectables, and you really want to worry about the cross contamination from parasites and other illnesses from the raccoon being transmitted to your pet. So, keep pets as pets and wild as wild.
Right. If there's a problem with wildlife, who do we contact? Your services as well?
We only deal with injured wildlife, so your best bet is to call a wildlife removal company, and they can help you find out how to keep them off your property.
All right, great.
We'll take a break. Be right back. If you didn't get your questions answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with John Fisher. He's the director of the Huntsville Animal Services, 256-883-3782. Also, check out animals at huntsvilleal.gov. Here's how to reach Michael Timberlake with Timberlake, League & Brooks. They are personal injury attorneys, so everything from nursing home negligence to car accidents, 256-536-0770, to dog bites, 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com, and if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And Sharon does family law here in North Alabama and Tennessee, in North Alabama and the Tennessee Valley, 256-539-7337 or SharonFamilyLaw.com.
Thanks for all your questions. We learned a lot. Thank you, John,
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate
Very
having you.
interesting.